The tale begins with a boy named Kazuya. He comes across a thug brandishing a knife, threatening some girls. Kazuya tackles the thug to the ground, but gets stabbed and dies. He then awakens in the body of a young boy, confused as he sees his reflection in the mirror. After a week of unconsciousness, his mother, Sarah, checks on him, thinking he must be hungry. She orders the maid, Sylvia, to bring him some soup. They leave him to rest, and Kazuya realizes he has been reincarnated into another world. He examines his surroundings, trying to comprehend where he is. Sylvia returns with his soup, feeds him, and tries to put him to bed. She answers his questions, revealing that he is now a 3-year-old boy named Cain, the third son of a high-ranking noble named Garm, who commands an army that protects the kingdom of Esford from foreign invaders. Excited by the prospect of living in a world where adventurers wield swords and magic to defeat monsters, he expresses a desire to learn magic. However, Sylvia tells him he must first learn to write, so he begins his studies, eager to embrace his new life. Later, his family is surprised to find he has already learned how to read and write. His sister Rain adds that he can even do math, so they start to think that he is a genius, but he is really just a high schooler stuck in the body of a 3-year-old boy. They wonder why he is now interested in studying, because he seems to be a different person, and Cain explains that he just wants to learn everything he can about the world. Garm supports him, saying that it will help him become a successful person and allows him to read books about magic and history. Sarah is happy to learn he is interested in magic, but they don't think that he is ready for that yet, saying he's too young to use magic, so he should just study the books for now. However, Cain realizes that he can already use magic, but he is having a hard time controlling it, and he tries to hide it from everyone around him. Rain realizes that he is studying about the outside world, so she teaches him about the 300-year history of the kingdom, as well as the different races in the world. After 2 years, the day of Cain's baptism arrives. They travel by carriage to the venue, with Cain excited to see the outside world. He asks his sister, Rain, to show him her stats after the ritual. Rain opens her status window, revealing she can use 3 types of elemental magic. Sarah explains that Rain received a level 2 blessing from the god of magic, which is very beneficial as it determines the amount of magic needed to cast spells and affect skills. The blessing ranges up to level 5 and is granted by one of the 7 pillar gods they worship. As part of their kingdom's religion, they arrive at the venue and kneel before the statues of the 7 gods. The priest begins the ceremony, asking the gods to guide Cain on his path. A bright light illuminates the area, and Cain is suddenly transported to the realm of the gods. He is astonished to find that the gods have been awaiting this day, addressing him as Kazuya. The god of creation, Zenim, introduces himself. Cain finds Zenim's appearance strange, but Zenim, being a god, is aware of Cain's thoughts. The god of death and rebirth, Rhyme, reveals that Kazuya's death was unforeseen. Without divine intervention, the thug would have tripped and been caught. This revelation makes Cain feel his death was in vain, but the god of earth was moved by his good deeds, leading to his reincarnation into this new world. Rhyme apologizes because Cain was not supposed to recall his memories at the age of 3, but Cain tells her that it's okay, since it allowed him to write and use magic, and even enjoy life with his new family. The god of magic takes a liking to him, so she gives him her blessing. Zenim follows suit, and the god of war gives him his blessings, along with his swordsmanship and martial arts. The god of technology also grants his blessing, telling him to use his knowledge from his previous life to make progress in the world. The god of commerce gives him the judgment and item box skills, while the god of earth gives him some unique skills that he can use when he returns. Zenim laughs as he sends Cain back with the blessing of all the gods, and the priest states that this is the first time he has seen the statue shine with such brilliance. Garm wants to see Cain's status window, thinking he must have received multiple blessings, but Cain doesn't want to show it to them because he thinks it might be a problem, so he runs away, claiming that his stomach hurts. He hides as he checks his status window, and he is shocked to see that all of his magic blessings and skills are at level 10. Cain thought that the highest level was 5, so he wonders what the gods were thinking when they gave him their blessing. He wants to hide it from everyone, but he realizes that Zenom granted him the ability to conceal his status. After that, we see him at the dining table with his family, where they discuss the light from the baptism ceremony. Garm asks Cain about his status, so Cain shows it to them, thinking he has already concealed it. However, they are still shocked by the numbers, especially his magic score, because even palace mages can't come close to that number. Garm states that with his skills, he will be successful no matter what job he chooses, and warns Cain never to show his status window to anyone, as he could be seen as a threat to the kingdom. Cain returns to his room, wondering what is considered average stats. He sees a book about summoning magic, so he goes outside to summon a fluffy animal, but ends up summoning a demon instead. The demon starts attacking his sister, who happens to be passing by. Cain tries to attack the demon with a fire spell, but the demon grabs onto him while he uses a return spell to send it back. He drops to the floor and passes out, but eventually regains consciousness, happy to see his sister smiling because of his deeds. Later, he is presented to a crowd during his debut, where he reveals that his goal is to become an adventurer and protect everyone. Garm tells him that he needs to study more to achieve his goal, arranging for a tutor to help him out. We see him reading in his room as he wonders what his tutor is going to be like. His tutors arrive. One of the tutors, Millie, nervously introduces herself, while the other one, Nina, makes a very short introduction, and Millie tells her not to be rude to the nobles. But Cain tells them they don't need to be formal when speaking to him, since they are his tutors, making them feel relieved. Garm wants them to teach Cain for 3 years, and they immediately begin his training. They head to the training grounds where Millie tells him to try doing some swings, but she is shocked by how skilled he is. Nina comments that he might be better than Millie, making her upset, so she challenges Cain to a mock fight. Cain charges at her, and she struggles to block his attacks. Nina asks Cain if he received the blessing of the god of war, and he admits it as he continues to fight. Millie steps back, saying she won't last if they keep going at that pace, and suggests he start learning magic from Nina. Nina reveals she has a level 3 blessing from the god of magic and wants to start with the basics, but Cain tells her he already knows them, demonstrating some beginner-level magic to prove his point. However, Nina informs him that he just used uncharted magic, which requires intense training just to shorten incantations, concluding that he is a genius. Millie points out that he even used all the elements, which Nina thinks is impossible because no one in their world can use all the elements so effectively. Cain admits he also has the blessing from the god of magic, impressing his tutors. They are shocked when he offers them a towel from his item box. They realize Cain is too extraordinary, and they can no longer teach him within the mansion, fearing he might destroy it with his powers. They approach Garm, explaining the situation and asking for his permission to train Cain outside the mansion. The next day, they leave the mansion, and Nina instructs him to use an intermediate level magic on a boulder, so he uses a fire spell, which makes the rock explode, blowing his tutors away and leaving behind a huge crater. Nina tells him that the spell was way beyond intermediate, while Millie wonders why he still doesn't feel tired, making them realize that he has an insane amount of magic. A killer rabbit suddenly appears, charging toward Cain, but he dodges its attack and counters with wind magic. He stores its remains in his item box so that he can show his family when he gets back home. Millie wishes she had a magic bag, which functions like an item box, but it is too expensive for her to afford. Nina uses a search spell to look for more monsters to hunt, revealing the location of nearby creatures. Cain wants to learn the spell, so Nina gives him a brief explanation about it, and he tries it out, allowing him to detect nearby creatures as well as the type of creatures that were discovered. They take out the creatures, but one monster retreats to the forest as Cain runs after it. Millie stops him, saying that the forest is full of strong monsters that attack the city every few decades, which explains why it is so heavily fortified. That evening, Cain realizes he's already at level 8 due to a skill that grants him 100 times the experience. He curses the gods for making him so overpowered. They head to the guild hall in search of a quest, but encounter a burly guy who looks down on them for being D-rank adventurers, mockingly asking if their quest is babysitting since they're with a kid. He orders Millie to pour him a drink, but Millie refuses, and Nina tells him they're on duty. Angered, he grabs Nina while his companions restrain Millie. Kane slaps the man's hand, causing him to fall and writhe in pain. The man tries to retaliate, but is no match for Kane, who effortlessly dodges his attacks. Kane catches his sword with 2 fingers and throws him outside. The man's companions threaten to kill Millie, but Kane charges at them, tossing them out as well. His tutors thank him, and Millie is surprised. He's also skilled in martial arts, but he claims he just learned it from books. They return to the forest to continue training, and after 3 years, his tutor's contract is about to end. Wanting to thank them for their kindness, he recalls that Millie wanted a magic bag. He ventures into the forest to gather the necessary materials, easily defeating the powerful monsters. However, a guard sees the pillars of fire Kane used and mistakenly believes the monsters are preparing to attack the city again. The guard sounds the alarm, so Garm heads to the forest with his soldiers, but instead of seeing monsters, they encounter a huge crater. Kane completes the last part of his training, and he gives them the magic bags that he made. He tells them about the monsters he defeated, and we learn that it would normally take a party of a rank adventurers, but he did it on his own. Kane tells them that the magic bags could hold a whole mansion, and only they can hold on to it, but they tell him that it would be considered beyond a national treasure level item. But they bid each other farewell, saying they all had fun during the experience. 2 years later, Kane is now 10 years old, and they head to the royal capital for Kane's debut, which is a mandatory event for all noble sons. His father tells him that their journey will take 1 week if no monsters get in the way. Kane uses his search ability to detect any nearby threats and tells his father that people are being attacked by monsters 3 kilometers ahead. Garm orders his men to pick up the pace, but Kane knows they won't make it in time to save the people, so he jumps out of the carriage and uses a boost spell to run ahead. Meanwhile, as monsters are about to annihilate the townspeople, a soldier valiantly tries to protect the royal carriage. A monster approaches, but Kane suddenly appears, effortlessly killing the beasts and defeating their general with his fire sword. He checks on everyone, introducing himself as the son of Garm and using a healing spell to help the soldiers recover. Unfortunately, some soldiers didn't survive, so he stores their bodies in his item box. Just then, Garm arrives, ready to help, but realizes the battle is already over. The door of the royal carriage opens, revealing Princess Telestia and Miss Silk, the Duke's daughter. They introduce themselves to the ladies, and the princess collapses from the stress. Kane casts a spell to help them relax, easing their hearts. The girls thank Kane for saving them, revealing that they watched him fight from their carriage window. They start vying for his attention, and Silk asks what brought him there. Kane explains they are heading to the royal capital for his debut. The girls reveal that they too will be having their debuts and invite Kane to travel with them. When Kane is about to travel, he sits between the 2 girls in the royal carriage. He doesn't feel comfortable in his position, so he wants to move to another seat, but the girls won't let him go. They arrive at a town where the girls want Kane to spend the night with them because they feel safer around him. Garm asks for them to reconsider, since it would be inappropriate for boys and girls to share a room, but the girls tell him that they are still traumatized from the last attack, so they want Kane to protect them. Kane is pressured into sharing the room with them, but agrees under the condition that the room is huge. They go to their rooms, but Kane realizes that the beds are too close together. The girls want Kane to sleep in the middle as they move the beds closer to each other. The girls get closer to him, claiming that they are scared, and Kane becomes too nervous to go to sleep. This goes on for a few nights, making Kane sleep deprived as they arrive at the royal capital. When they exit their carriage, they are greeted by the vice captain named Gazzard, who thanks Kane for saving the girls and his men. Kane removes the remains of the fallen guards from his item box, wanting everyone to recognize their bravery in fighting the orcs to protect the girls. As Kane is about to leave, Gazard grabs onto him, insisting that he will have an audience with the king. Gazard leads him to the king's hall, where Cain meets the king. He pays his respects, and the king recounts how Cain saved the carriage by defeating the orc group. Acknowledging Cain's heroic deeds, the king declares that the girls would not have survived without him, and bestows upon Cain the title of Baron along with his own mansion. However, a noble named Corgino protests, arguing that Cain is too young to be a baron. The king counters, pointing out that Corgino could not achieve the same feats as Cain, leading Corgino to relent. Cain reluctantly accepts the title of baron, and the king concludes the audience, instructing him to go backstage. We see Cain in a room with his father, who comments that Cain is the first among his sons to be promoted. The king joins them, bowing to Cain as he thanks him for saving his daughter. Cain is not comfortable seeing them in such a position, asking them to raise their heads, but the king felt the need to thank Cain as a father. The king tells him that since he excels in both magic and the sword, and even has the blessing of the gods, the kingdom can't leave such a talented child to his own devices. That's why he is given the title of Baron, even asking him to marry Princess Telestia, while the Duke also wants him to marry his daughter. Cain is shocked, but the girls are happy, as the king explains that he will now be engaged to the two girls, because he has slept with both of them, but we learn that this was all part of their plan to keep Cain in the kingdom. They continue to pressure Cain, and he eventually agrees to marry their daughters. We see Cain in the capital church, where he prays to the gods, allowing him to enter their world once again. He asks the gods about his stats, and Zeem admits that his stats are insane, so he is probably the most powerful human in the world, asking him if he wants to become a demigod. However, he tells Cain that there are limits to what he can do alone, warning him not to test those limits. Zeem tells him that there isn't much entertainment in his current world, so he suggests using his knowledge from his previous life to create something. Cain contemplates introducing an item that doesn't exist in this world, and Zeem agrees with his idea. Upon returning to the world, Cain encounters a cat girl named Parma, who mentions she is training at her uncle Tamani's shop. Cain visits the shop, admiring the wide variety of goods. He describes the item he has in mind to Tamanis, drawing it out and explaining the details. Tamanis likes the concept and believes he can produce it at an affordable price. Cain requests a prototype, giving Tamanis a gold coin as upfront investment. Tamanis accepts the task and assures Cain he will do his best. After some time, Tamanis presents the prototype. Cain is impressed and demonstrates how the game is played with Parma. Excited, Tamanis thinks the game will be popular. Cain suggests creating a different version for nobles. Certain they would prefer a fancier edition, he provides Tamanis with funds for mass production, shocking Tamanis, who bows and promises his best effort. They take the sample to the altar, swearing to the god of commerce to uphold their contract, causing the prototype to vanish as it is accepted. Consequently, no one else can produce the same product for 3 years. Cain instructs Tamanis to start selling the product next month and prepare an extravagant version for the royal family. After that, he makes his way home, and he is informed that the debut is about to begin, so he rushes to get ready and leaves with his parents. Garm knows that Cain will get a lot of attention because he recently became a baron, so he warns his son to watch out for parents who want to introduce their daughters to him. They arrive at the venue, where the royal family makes their appearance. The king gives a speech about the next generation, and Cain goes to the king with his family, and he presents the game that he developed with Tamanis. The king is interested, wanting to talk to him after the ceremony. Garm wasn't aware of the game's development, and Cain explains that he needs to find other sources of income to help him maintain the mansion. His parents leave, as they tell him to interact with the other children. Cain sits with Silk, who displays her interest in him as she starts teasing him, but Corgino's son Habit interrupts them, giving Silk a compliment and expecting her to reciprocate, but Silk just silently greets him. One of Habit's companions demands that Cain show his respect, prompting Cain to rise and introduce himself as Baron Cain. However, they mistakenly believe he is merely the son of a baron and begin to look down on him. Habit assumes Kane hails from a poor family since he omits his last name and threatens to have his friends beat him up if he doesn't apologize for his perceived rudeness. Kane retorts that it is Habit who is being rude, leading to a confrontation outside where Habit challenges him to a fight. Habit's friends reveal they possess God's blessing and can wield magic. The first steps forward, attempting to impress by conjuring a feeble fireball, which Kane effortlessly dodges. The second tries to be flashy as well, but merely launches some weak rock projectiles. As they prepare to attack again, Silk intervenes, frustrated, and declares that Kane is not just a Baron's son, but the Baron himself, recounting his impressive feats. She orders them to bow before him, given his superior rank, and they comply, pleading for his forgiveness before departing. Silk then discerns a darker side to Kane, realizing he prolonged the encounter to make it more entertaining, despite knowing the youths were mistaken. She promises to keep this secret from Telestia on the condition that Kane goes on a date with her. At that moment, Telestia arrives, wanting to know what happened, but Silk just tells her that they are going to go on a date. Telestia becomes jealous, so Kane tells her that he will also go on a date with her. The king interrupts them, summoning Kane for their meeting, where they play the game Kane developed. The king enjoys the game, wanting to keep it exclusively between them, but Kane reveals that it's going to be made available to the public. The Duke is also there, and they take the chance to remind him that his engagement with their daughters is a secret, telling him to be careful on his date. The next day, Kane is given the deed and key to his new mansion. He goes to check it out, but when he arrives, he finds it's completely run down. As he enters, the lights don't work, so he uses his magic to light the way. He checks out the rooms, but finds that everything is filthy and all the rooms are empty. But it doesn't bother him, as he uses his magic to instantly repair and clean the entire mansion. He fixes up all the rooms, and the mansion is as good as new. He gets a visitor, and it turns out to be his mate Sylvia, who is overjoyed to be working for him again. And he meets his new butler, who introduces himself as Colin. Sylvia is eager to begin, ordering the other maids to start cleaning, only to discover that everything is already spotless. Kane admits to having cleaned everything with his magic. Colin reminds him to return to his family, and Kane recalls that his older brothers are coming home for a visit. When they meet his brothers, they are astonished by how quickly he acquired a mansion and became a baron. Rain expresses a desire to visit his mansion, but her brothers caution her that it might be haunted due to its dilapidated state. Kane reassures her that it will be fine. Upon visiting his mansion, they are stunned to find it in perfect condition. His father is puzzled, recalling that the mansion was falling apart during his last visit, but he soon realizes this is Kane's doing. They admire all the rooms, though his father notes the lack of art. Kane questions the necessity of art, and Garm explains that nobles are fond of decorating their mansions with paintings, armors, and even mounted monsters. Inspired, Kane decides to display one of his monsters. Suddenly, Sylvia screams, causing everyone to rush over. The maids are shocked to see an enormous red dragon, and Kane realizes he forgot to mention it. His father demands an explanation, and Kane nonchalantly states it is just a monster he defeated. His father, astonished, inquires when this happened, and Kane reveals it was during a recent trip to the forest. His father explains that a red dragon is considered a calamity-level monster, one that even ranked adventurers struggle to defeat. He also informs Kane that a mounted red dragon would be worth 1,000 platinum coins, leaving Kane astounded by the equivalent value of $100 million. They suddenly hear another scream, so they rush over to check it out. His mother asks him about the toilet because it sprayed water at them, and it was like nothing they had ever experienced before. Kane explains that he used his magic to make it shoot water, and Rain asks him to install one in their house. Garm calls them dramatic for freaking out over a toilet, but they tell him to try it out himself. So he gives it a go, and finds it delightful, instantly changing his mind, and requesting one as well. His father tells him that his visitors will also enjoy the experience, and Kane wonders what he means. His father says that when a noble is given a mansion, it's a rule that they must host a debut party, and Cain is shocked to learn he has another debut. Later that night, he wonders what he is going to do, but Colin has prepared a list of people he needs to invite and the things that he will need. As he checks out the list, he sees Corgino's name and he wonders why he should invite him. Colin says that since he is a high-ranking noble, it would be bad not to invite him. Cain wonders why the king isn't on the list, and Colin tells him that only high-ranking nobles are allowed to invite him. He thinks about preparing the food and drinks for the party, but panics because he also needs to get a gift for all his guests. But Sylvia gives him some ideas, and he creates a glass using his magic. Most people are accustomed to using porcelain, so Cain decides to gift glasses to all his guests. He then moves on to preparing the food, using a recipe from his previous life to create Hamburg steak, which Sylvia finds absolutely delicious. She tries his drink next, marveling at its fizzy bubbles, and Cain explains that he used his magic to add bubbles to regular wine. Colin interrupts, informing Cain that the king is summoning him. At the palace, the king is upset because he never received an invitation to Cain's party, and the Duke has been taunting him about it. Cain quickly excuses himself, saying he wanted to deliver the invitation in person and hadn't had the chance until now. The king is overjoyed by this, and Cain feels relieved. On the night of the party, Cain welcomes all his guests. The Duke arrives with Silk, and they are astonished by the red dragon. Cain thanks his guests and makes a toast. Everyone is impressed by the drink, with the Duke commenting on how the glass shines like a treasure. The king arrives and encourages everyone to enjoy themselves. He tries the sparkling wine and finds it delightful. Next, he samples the Hamburg steak, finding it rich, juicy, and surprised by the cheese in the middle. The queen rushes out, exclaiming about the revolutionary nature of Cain's toilet and demanding one for the palace. The king tries it himself and immediately insists that Cain install one in the palace. The king compliments Cain on his hospitality, and all the nobles applaud him. But at that moment, Colin tells him that Corgino is arriving. Corgino rudely approaches, calling the house small, but is shocked when he sees the red dragon. He heads into the dining room, looking down on everyone else. They serve him the sparkling wine, which catches him off guard, but he pretends not to like it. He tries the Hamburg steak next and calls it disgusting, but he can't stop himself from eating it. He demands more sauce, snatching it from Sylvia, and Cain is annoyed at his behavior. But Colin tells him he shouldn't cause a scene. But Cain has an idea, thinking things will be fine, as long as he isn't the one causing the scene. Cain offers Corgino the glasses as a gift, but Corgino demands he hand over all of his glasses. Cain apologizes, saying that the glasses are his gift to everyone, but he says he has a bigger surprise for him. Corgino gets excited, but it turns out to be the king. Corgino is shocked to see him there, and the king tells him his behavior was unacceptable, when he should be leading by example as a high-ranking noble. Corgino runs away, and Silk finds it amusing how Cain set him up. However, the king realizes that Cain has manipulated him, resulting in an extended lecture. Cain then heads to the barracks, where he encounters Vice Captain Dazzard. Cain explains that he was instructed to leave his monster materials there, prompting Dazzard to guide him to a warehouse. Upon arrival, Cain notes that the space is insufficient. Dazzard speculates that Cain must possess something massive, like a red dragon, but Cain downplays it, revealing it's merely an earth dragon. Dazzard is equally astonished, remarking that it would require an entire party of rank adventurers to defeat one. In the courtyard, Cain begins unloading the monsters from his item box. Dazzard is astounded by the sheer number of monsters, unaware that these are only Cain's A-rank creatures, with S-rank monsters still hidden in his box. Pondering if Cain is a hero or a disciple of the gods, Dazzard receives a humble response from Cain, who insists he's just an ordinary boy. Dazzard chooses not to press further, informing Cain that appraising all the monsters will take some time. Cain assures him he can return whenever they're ready. As he goes to leave, Dazzard stops him, asking him to help train the knights, and says that he wants to show him off to his captain. Dazzard introduces Kane to the knights as the hero who defeated 30 orcs to save the princess. Kane wonders where the captain is, and Dazzard says the captain will probably arrive as soon as the mock battles begin. Kane imagines the captain as a scary monster, but Dazzard tells him not to worry. He decides to start the mock battle, but one of the knights speaks out, feeling bad because Kane is just a child, so Dazzard tells the knight to go first. The knight gives Kane the first move for free, telling him to show him what he can do. Kane uses his boost spell, dashing at him and instantly disarming the knight. The knight immediately admits defeat, and Kane thinks he overdid it. He tries to end things, but Dazzard grabs onto him, telling him to take on all the knights at once. But the fight is stopped as the captain Tifana jumps onto the scene. She wonders why her knights are picking on a child, hugging Kane, and telling him that everything is going to be okay, thinking he is just a lost child who wandered in. She demands an explanation from Dazzard, and he explains that Kane is actually the hero who defeated 30 orcs. Hearing this, Tifana's expression immediately changes as she becomes excited to meet him, and she challenges him to a duel. Dazzard tells her to introduce herself first, but she says they will get to know each other with their swords. The knights think that even Kane doesn't stand a chance because Tifana has the title of Master Swordsman. They prepare to fight, but Kane says he only has a wooden sword, but Tifana attacks him anyway. She uses her boost skill, charging at Kane, and the two exchange blows. The knights are shocked to see Kane keeping up with the captain. The two seem evenly matched, but Kane boosts his speed even more, getting behind the captain and winning the duel. Tifana becomes emotional with the result and immediately decides that she will marry him. Everyone is stunned, and Kane protests, saying it's too soon since he is only 10 years old and doesn't know anything about her. Tifana then introduces herself. In addition to being the captain of the Royal Knights, she is an honorary viscount and the daughter of a duke from the Northern Forest. She assures him not to worry about age, as she is an elf who will live at least 300 years, so her appearance won't change for a long time. However, Kane thinks that isn't the real issue. Seeking refuge, Kane hides behind Dazzard, insisting that marriage is a significant decision that they can't make on their own, especially since he is already engaged to Celestia and Silk. He begs for Dazzard's help, but Dazzard pretends to be asleep. Tifana concedes that they can't decide on their own and instructs Dazzard to arrange an audience with the king. Kane, fearing this is a terrible idea, has no choice but to go along. During the meeting, the king is puzzled by Kane's visit. Tifana declares her wish to marry Kane, prompting the king to ask what happened. Kane explains that after defeating Tifana in a duel, she proposed to him. The king asks him if he has told her about his other engagements, but Kane says he wasn't able to since it's meant to be a secret. The king explains that elves used to be kidnapped and enslaved for their beauty, but their first king changed things and made peace with the elves. The elf nation was taken in and put under the protection of the kingdom, and he reveals that Tifana is essentially their princess. The king tells Tifana that Kane is already engaged to Celestia and Silk. She seems disappointed to learn this, but as he starts to apologize, Tifana says that it only makes her want him even more. The king acknowledges her feelings, but tells her she needs to write a letter to her father to get his permission. Tifana leaves to write her letter, but drags Kane away so they can fight some more. After they leave, the king is surprised Kane was able to beat Tifana, and he wonders how he could be so strong at such a young age. Dazzard mentions Kane's reaction when he asked if he was a disciple of the gods, and the prime minister thinks they should test him by using a certain book. A few days later, Kane is exhausted and runs into Dazzard again, who asks why he looks so tired. Kane explains that Tifana has been forcing him on countless dates, which are really just the two of them fighting. Dazzard thanks him for helping Tifana, and Kane reveals he has also gained the Master Swordsman title. Suddenly, they hear Tifana's voice, and Kane tries to run, but Dazzard drags him away, saying the king wants to see him. Kane thinks he is in trouble, but the king shows him a book containing emperor-level magic passed down in the royal family, said to have been written by the first king. Kane checks it out and is amazed to see there is another level of magic, but the king reveals that no one can read the book because it's actually written in Japanese. Cain realizes he messed up, thinking that the first king must have also been someone reincarnated from Japan. The king asks about Cain's identity, and he realizes he can't hide the truth any longer, so he explains how he was reincarnated with memories from his previous life. Gorham wonders if he is really his son, and Cain claims that he is because the gods told him so. Everyone is shocked to hear he met the gods, and he recalls how he met the 7 gods during his baptism. The king can't believe he met all 7 gods, and they ask him to show his status. Cain opens his real status window, shocking everyone as they see his level 10 blessings and his title as God's Chosen. The king thinks that, with his title as God's Chosen, everyone in the world would bow to him, but Cain doesn't want that to happen, saying that he is happy with how things are in his life, with the adventures he's had, and the people he has met, so he wants them to just treat him the same as before. The king agrees to his request, but jokes that he could be king if he wanted. Tifana interrupts the meeting, revealing the letter from her father, agreeing to let her marry Cain. So she grabs Cain and takes him away, heading straight to the courtyard. Meanwhile, the king orders everyone to keep what they learned about Cain a secret, hoping that he will continue to protect the country as well as their people. Later, Telestia and Silk discover Cain's engagement to Tifana. Initially upset, they eventually accept the news and caution him not to accept every proposal he receives, wondering how many people they will have to share him with. Tifana bursts in, eager to share their love, leaving the girls to wonder what he's been doing with her. However, Cain gets dragged away before he can explain. Later, Cain revisits the first king's book and finds a message indicating that if he can read it, he must be from another world. The book turns out to be a record of the king's experiences. The king, introduced as Yuya Esford, had died in an accident, but was summoned to this world in his original body. Cain is suddenly interrupted by Telestia and Silk, who wonder what he is up to. Assuming he is studying for the academy entrance exams, they ask to study with him, but he tells them he is too busy. When they inquire about the following day, he says it's even worse and quickly runs away. He then runs into Tifana, who asks him to fight with her the next day, but he apologizes and runs away from her as well. The next day, on his 12th birthday, Cain is finally old enough to register as an adventurer, so he heads to the guild. Impressed by the capital's guild, he encounters an adventurer who advises him to stay safe, as he only has one life. Cain gets a feeling he has seen this adventurer before. At the counter, the clerk introduces herself as Tia. Cain asks to register as an adventurer, and she gives him a form to fill out. As he fills it out, he wonders if he should mention he is a baron, but decides to leave it out, thinking it shouldn't make a difference. After filling it out, Tia tells him to put a drop of his blood on the crystal so he can register for his guild card. She tells him he starts off in G rank, and he thinks about his tutors, who mentioned that they were in D rank. As Tia is explaining things to him, some adventurers interrupt, telling her to stop wasting her time with a kid. The man tells Cain to go home to his mother, trying to kick him, but Cain easily dodges. His friend tries to attack as well, but Cain avoids him as well. He makes a fool of them, and the man prepares to draw his sword. But things are stopped as the red-haired adventurer from earlier appears, and the man recognizes him as Claude from the Ice Flame Party. Claude asks if he wants to fight, and the men run off instead. Cain thanks Claude for his help, and Claude can tell he is strong, seeing the way he avoided the attacks from the men. They have a drink together, and Cain gets juiced since he is still a kid. Claude is interested in how he is so strong at such an age, and Cain tells him he was tutored when he was younger. Cain asks him why the men mentioned Ice Flame, and Claude reveals it's the name of his party, where he fights with a flaming sword, and his wife uses ice magic. He recommends Cain find a party so that he can take on bigger quests and rank up faster, revealing his gold card, which means he is a ranked adventurer. Cain is impressed by the card, but Claude mentions there is room for improvement, noting that the first king was a triple S rank and his card was supposedly black. Suddenly, Claude is struck as his wife Lena, appears. She questions why he's drinking, and Cain introduces himself, explaining that Claude saved him. She finds Cain cute and offers to help him if he gets into any more trouble. But then she drags Claude away, saying they need to continue their quest. Cain checks out the quest board and sees a job for transporting cargo. He thinks it would be easy with his item box, but he decides he wants a quest involving defeating monsters. He finds a quest to defeat goblins with no limit on how many he can defeat, thinking it's the perfect first quest for him. However, he runs into Tifana, and Gazzard explains they are heading out to train with the knights. Tifana asks what he's up to, and Cain says he is about to go on his first quest as an adventurer. Tifana decides to join him, saying she can't miss her husband's first adventure, and she leaves the training exercise to Gazzard. Cain tries to escape, but Tifana grabs him and drags him along. They head into the forest, with Tifana enjoying her time with him and wondering where the goblins are. Cain uses his search skill and detects goblins up ahead. They see a man surrounded by goblins and quickly rush to him. Cain heals the man with his magic. Tifana rushes at the goblins, easily cutting them down, but there are more goblins that appear. Cain uses his magic to boost her strength, and she feels as though they are fighting as one. She easily cuts them all down, but there is a giant goblin that appears. But thanks to Cain's magic, it's no match for her, and she cuts it in half. She starts dreaming about their wedding, asking Cain to praise her. But there are suddenly green lizards that appear. Cain tells her to get away with the man, telling her to leave them to him. He uses his light spell to blind them, and then follows up with his ice pillar. Magic ice pillars emerge, and the man wonders what's going on, but Tifana knows it's just Cain being Cain. Sometime later, we see Cain's tutors as they investigate the green lizards, but there is only a huge crater left behind. Cain reports to the guild, and he wonders if he can hand in the green lizards, even though he didn't take the quest. Tia is shocked to hear this because a green lizard quest is usually C ranked, and Cain reveals that he defeated 30 of them. Tia can't believe it, so she rushes to the chief to report what happened. The chief, introducing himself as Cedric, meets with Cain and mentions that the guild master is busy, so he's handling Cain's case. Cedric suspects Cain of trying to cheat the system since he just registered as an adventurer, and doubts his claim of killing a green lizard. Despite Cain's insistence that he defeated them, Cedric thinks he's a peasant trying to scam the guild out of reward money. Cedric decides to punish Cain by revoking his guild card, declaring that he doesn't tolerate cheaters. Just then, the guildmaster enters. Cedric explains the situation, insisting there's no way Cain could have defeated 30 green lizards. However, the guildmaster laughs and tells Cedric he has much to learn. Cedric is incredulous that the guildmaster is siding with Cain, but then the guildmaster calls in his guest, who turns out to be Tifana. She hugs Cain, calling him her husband, leaving Tia and Cedric shocked. Cain wonders what she is doing at the guild, and she explains she was there to discuss the city's countermeasures against goblins and green lizards. The guildmaster mentions that Cain is a baron and the hero who saved the princess, but Cedric can't believe it, saying there was no mention of it on his registry form. But Cain says he left it out because he didn't want any special treatment. The guildmaster mentions that if Cain marries Tifana, then he will also be his brother-in-law, which is a shock to Cain, learning that he is Tifana's brother. Cedric begs for forgiveness, and Tifana mentions he should be executed for insulting a noble, but Cain accepts his apology, warning him not to assume things so quickly. Cain asks if they will take his green lizards, and the guildmaster decides to promote him to C rank, but Tifana says it's not enough, mentioning how he is stronger than her, and even defeated a red dragon when he was 10. So the guildmaster decides to make him a rank instead, although he mentions that Cain will need to subjugate some bandits. Tia and Cedric can't believe he is being promoted to a rank in a single day, and the guildmaster tells them to handle the paperwork. After they leave, the guildmaster apologizes for Cedric's behavior, but Cain tells him not to worry. The guildmaster admits he was concerned when he heard his sister got engaged, but he is relieved after meeting Cain and asks him to take care of his sister. Meanwhile, the gods watch Cain, laughing at all the trouble he's causing. They wonder if it was a mistake to make him so strong, but Xenom insists he needs to get even stronger, revealing that a being named Aaron is about to be released from his seal. Aaron was sealed away 300 years ago, and the gods fear what will happen when he gets free. They decide Cain needs to get even stronger, thinking he should train with a certain master to reach the next level. Back at the palace, the girls ask to study with him again, but Tefana suddenly enters, saying she enjoyed their date in the forest and suggesting they go to the beach next time. The girls realize that he turned them down the other day, only to go on a date with Tefana instead. They tell him he needs to take them on dates as well, and all he can do is apologize to them. We see Cain in bed as Sylvia bursts in, apologizing because she forgot to wake him up. We learn that today is the day of his academy entrance exams. Cain rushes out the door as Sylvia continues to apologize, but he tells her not to worry because he won't be late. As he gets outside, he uses a teleportation spell to get to the academy. He checks in for the exam and is given directions to his room. As he heads over, he finds it strange that he doesn't recognize anyone on the list. When he gets to the room, he wonders if Telestia and Silk are taking the exam in another room. The examiner comes in and tells them they have 2 hours to complete the test, warning them that any cheaters will be immediately removed. The test begins, and it's just basic math and writing skills, which Cain finds easy, thanks to his knowledge from his previous life. During the test, the examiner sees him relaxing, but he says he is already finished, which surprises her because it's only been 30 minutes. After the test ends, they are told they will be moving on to the magic assessment, which gets Cain excited. They head out into the courtyard, and the examiner tells them they are to use their strongest spell at the target. Cain wonders if it will be okay to use his full power, and the examiner tells him the area is protected by a defensive barrier, so he can use any magic that he wants. We see a boy as he starts to chant and create a fireball, but it's so weak that it surprises Cain. Another student goes, and she is just as weak, making Cain realize that this is the level most 12-year-olds are at. He was planning to use his Inferno spell, but realizes that would probably be a bad idea. When it's his turn, he creates a fireball that turns blue and uses a fire bullet spell, but it ends up causing a huge explosion, blasting right through the wall. The area suffers massive damage, and Cain is confused because he only used a beginner-level spell. The examiner can't believe her eyes as Cain tries to explain himself. The examiner checks the area and then tells them to move on to their swordsmanship exam. They move to another part of the academy where the examiner introduces some rank adventurers who are there to help assess them. Cain is surprised to see Claude, who wonders what he is up to, and Cain explains he is taking the entrance exam. Claude wants to be his opponent, but Cain tries to decline. However, the examiner insists that Claude is the highest-ranked adventurer, so he can't refuse. The two prepare to fight, and Claude tells him to show him what he can do. Cain thinks he should be pretty strong since he is a ranked, so he uses his boost skill and starts to attack. The two start to exchange blows, and the other kids can't believe how fast they are moving. Claude is impressed by Cain, but Claude gets too excited, using his own boost skill, and they start moving even faster. But their fight gets interrupted as the examiner tells them to stop, saying they are scaring the other kids. Claude thinks they went a little overboard and decides to call it for the day, but tells Cain they should go on a quest together sometime. But Cain isn't sure that's a good idea. The examiner says he has seen enough and tells Cain to go home and wait for the results. He heads back home, and Sylvia wonders how he did. He says everything went well, and Sylvia wants to have a party to celebrate. He says it's still too early to celebrate, but his stomach growls, and Sylvia rushes off to prepare him some food. At the palace, we see Cain being questioned by the king about the damage he caused. Cain explains that the examiner told him he could use his full power since there was a barrier, but even though he only used beginner magic instead of his new emperor-level magic, it still caused massive damage. The king is surprised that he can use emperor-level magic, but Cain says he's not sure what would happen to his surroundings if he used it, and asks if there is anywhere he could practice. They tell him absolutely not. The king then asks where Cain took his exam because Telestra complained that she didn't see him during the test. Cain mentions that he checked in at the south entrance and was directed to his room. Upon hearing this, the king asks why the academy has a north and south entrance, causing Cain to realize his mistake. The north entrance leads to where the nobles live, so he ended up taking the exam with all the commoners instead. The Duke mentions that this even caused a problem with the academy headmaster. In a flashback, we see the headmaster telling the Duke there is a problem with releasing the results because a commoner got a perfect score on the written exam, destroyed the training area, and fought on equal footing with an A-ranked adventurer. The Duke just laughs, knowing it could only be Cain, and tells the headmaster to release the results. At the academy, the results are released, and Cain looks for his name. Silk calls out to him, telling him he is at the top of the class, while Telestra is second, and she is in third place. She teases him about the damage he caused, and tells him how Telestra was mad she didn't see him, making him worried he is in trouble. He suddenly sees his sister Rain, who is guiding some other students. She rushes over to him, overjoyed to see him. She is impressed he is the top of his class, and wishes him luck on his speech, saying that it's tradition for the top-scoring student to give a speech at the entrance ceremony. Cain wishes Telestra could do it instead, but Rain tells him he doesn't have a choice. Cain returns home, and Sylvia is overjoyed to learn he passed, saying they need to celebrate and that she will cook enough food to feed 100 people. She rushes off, and Cain thinks she is going overboard, but he thinks it's a good occasion to be happy. On the day of the entrance ceremony, Cain sees his parents have come to watch him. He is joined by Telestra and Silk, who are charmed by his appearance in the uniform, thinking he looks cute. As the ceremony begins, the other students wonder who he is, feeling jealous that he's seated between the two girls. The headmaster calls Cain up to give his speech, and he introduces himself, mentioning how he mixed up his exam, but looks forward to becoming friends with everyone, hoping they can all get along. The students cheer for him. The king then appears to congratulate all the students, mentioning certain irregularities, and Cain feels like he is being warned. They move on to their first class, where their homeroom teacher, Elka, introduces herself. She tells them to think about their future and choose what they plan to study. Cain wants to pursue adventuring, but the girls object. Telestra insists that, since he is already a baron, he needs to learn more about being a noble. Cain gets upset, but Silk reassures him that he can choose more than one course. So, Cain decides to take nobility, adventuring, and magic. He asks what the girls are going to choose. Telestra says she will pick nobility and internal affairs because she wants to help him manage his domain in the future. Silk chooses nobility and commerce, wanting to be useful to him as well. As they leave their class, Cain sees some bullies picking on a girl. He notices her ear and realizes it's Parma from the item shop. The bullies turn out to be Habit and his boys, and they bully her for being a beast, saying she doesn't belong in their class, since they are all nobles. But Cain steps in, saying nobles and commoners are equals at the school. Habit doesn't care, but soon realizes he is talking to Cain, remembering their past encounter. The boys wonder why he is siding with a commoner when he is a noble himself, but Cain says he is just siding with his friend. Habit threatens to tell his father to ruin Parma's family, but the girls approach, causing the boys to get on their knees and apologize. They are forced to apologize to Parma, and they quickly get away. Parma thanks Cain for his help, but the girls suddenly wonder about his relationship with her, making Cain kneel as they have a chat with Parma. He gets worried. They are forming an alliance, but he suddenly hears a voice telling him to visit the library. Cain decides to check it out, but as he opens the door, it leads to another space, and he is teleported to a room where he meets a man who asks him if he wants some coffee. Cain demands to know who he is, wondering how there is coffee in this world, but the man says he has been waiting for him, calling him Kazuyo, his name from his previous life. The man introduces himself as Yuya, and Cain recognizes him as the first king. He recalls reading about Yuya in a book written over 300 years ago and wonders if he is a ghost. However, Yuya just laughs and tells him to check his stats. Cain opens his status window and is shocked to see he has the title, God of Creation. Yuya explains that they are in another world he created, so he is considered a god and maintains his appearance even after 300 years. He goes on to explain how he spoke with Zenom and how the other gods wanted him to help with Cain's training. Cain thinks he is already too strong, so Yuya challenges him to take a cookie from him. Cain tries, but is easily stopped, with Yuya saying he has a long way to go. Cain wonders why he needs to get stronger, and Yuya reveals that he must fight Eren, the evil god. He explains that 300 years ago, Eren caused people all over the world to fight and kill each other using an oracle that sowed distrust in everyone's subconscious. Together with his companions, Yuya managed to seal Eren away, but the seal has since weakened, and he will soon be resurrected. Cain asks why he can't just seal him again, but Yuya says since he became a god, he can no longer directly interfere in the world, just like the other gods. Yuya also mentions that Cain's previous life is important, but they suddenly teleport to the sea. Yuya throws him a sword and says he will tell him more if he can complete his training. He gives him a compass to follow, which he says will lead him back to the house where they were. He tells Cain to level up, saying he would need to get to at least 600 to stand a chance against Eren. Cain thinks it will take forever, since he is only around level 300, so he worries about missing school, but Yuya tells him that 1 year in this world is equal to only 1 day in the other world. Yuya wishes him luck and disappears, and Cain realizes he has no other choice, so he starts heading back to the house. As he enters the forest, he is instantly attacked by a range of deadly monsters. Meanwhile, in the other world, Celestia and Silk pay a visit to Cain's mansion, wondering about Cain because he didn't go to school. Sylvia also gets worried, thinking he could be in some kind of trouble, but Celestia has faith in him and decides to stay over and wait for him to return. We see Cain as he is caught by a beast and is completely exhausted, but he manages to blast it with his magic, falling to the ground. We learn he has already spent months in the forest, and he wonders if he will ever get back. He suddenly hears a cry, and he gets up out of instinct, dragging himself over to the sound, and he finds an injured beast lying on the ground. He thinks about putting it out of its misery, but as he is about to do it, he suddenly remembers how he always just wanted to protect someone, so he forces himself to use all the magic that he has to heal the beast. But this ends up causing him to pass out. The beast protects Cain from the other monsters, and when he wakes up, it leaps onto him and starts licking him. Realizing it's also alone, Cain asks it to join him and names it Haku. With Haku's companionship, Cain maintains his sanity, remembering he must not give up because he has something to protect. After some time, he finally returns to the house. Yuya welcomes him back, commenting on how much he's grown, revealing that 4 years have passed. Yuya is surprised to see Haku, noting that it's a holy beast and suggests they could form a contract. Cain agrees, and Haku vanishes, but Yuya explains that Cain can now summon him whenever he wants. Yuya then introduces Cain to his next teacher, Duran. Duran tells Cain he's still not strong enough because Eren is stronger than Yuya, who is stronger than Duran, so Cain must first defeat him. Cain uses his boost skill, but Duran dodges his attack and knocks him out with a single punch. When Cain wakes up, he finds that Duran took him in, and he meets Duran's wife, Ruri. They also have a pet dragon named Jin. Cain is excited to befriend Jin, but Haku jumps on him, clearly not fond of the dragon. Cain joins them for a meal and starts crying because it's the first time he's eaten real food in 4 years. Meanwhile, Celestia and Silk are baking, worried about Cain, but hoping to make him happy with their treats when he returns. Cain continues to train with Duran and gets beaten up every day. After training for a year, Cain is still getting beaten up, and Duran wonders how he will be able to defeat Eren. But Cain thinks back to his talk with Yuya, where he explains Eren used to be the god of amusement in the other world. Cain is shocked to learn there used to be 8 gods, and Yuya tells him how Eren used an oracle to force everyone in the world into a death game, and if he returns, the death game will happen again, and everyone Kane knows will get caught up in it. Kane uses this as motivation to continue his training. Ya also goes on to reveal the reason that Eren is linked to his past life is because Eren killed his parents. We learn that his parents, Saya and Megumi, were also killed in a car accident and summoned as heroes to the world. The gods were unable to interfere directly, so they tasked the three of them with stopping Eren, giving them an orb that could seal him away. They fight against Eren, but he is unaffected by Megumi's magic. So Yuya and Saya charge at him, attacking with their swords and even managing to cut his arm. But Eren retaliates with his magic, which ends up killing Megumi. Saya activates his ultimate skill, charging at Eren, but he ends up getting stabbed. However, Ya takes this chance and manages to seal him, but at the cost of Saya's life. As Kane reflects on saving those dear to him, he overpowers Duran and finally completes his training. Kane visits his parents' graves, and Yuya mentions how they were always worried about him. Kane thanks Ya for looking after his parents, and Yuya shows him a cookie, which Kane manages to grab this time, acknowledging his growth. Ya suggests having some coffee, but Kane is eager to return to the Otherworld. Noticing how different Kane looks, Ya watches as Kane uses his power to revert his appearance. Ya tells Kane to take care of Haku, and Duran advises him to take Jin to see the Otherworld as well. Kane forms a contract with Jin, thanking both Yuya and Duran for looking after him as he prepares to leave. Ya throws Kane a sword, telling him to give it to the king, and Kane teleports away. He reappears at his mansion, where the girls are overjoyed to see him. He apologizes for making them worry, but Telestia says they had faith he would return and even learned how to make cookies for his homecoming. They welcome him back warmly, and Kane is grateful to have them in his life as he enjoys the cookies. Kane meets with the king and explains how he met with Yuya in another world. The king finds it hard to believe, but Kane shows off the sword that Yuya gave to him, and they instantly recognize it, so they believe his story. The king reads a letter from Yuya and learns Kane was trained by him. Kane recounts his grueling training, of how he was left in the forest with vicious monsters, and how he got beaten up every day for 5 years. The king is shocked, wondering how he trained for 5 years, but the Duke just finds him amusing as normal. The Duke mentions that while he was gone, the guild was looking for him because he hasn't taken any quests since he became a ranked, so they might have to cancel his registration. Kane gets worried hearing this and immediately heads to the guild. He meets with the guild master, wondering what's going on, and the master explains that when he was promoted to a rank, he was told he would need to subjugate some bandits. Kane mentions how he has been busy starting at the academy, but the master tells him there is a time limit for him to complete the quest, or else his registration will be cancelled. Seeing he has no other choice, Kane accepts it right away, and the master tells him about a group of bandits that have been causing trouble along a road toward the capital. He mentions there are around 10 bandits in the group, but he thinks Kane should have no problem since he is the strongest person in the city. Kane teleports to the road and casts a fly spell to scout for bandits from above. Spotting the bandits trying to rob a carriage, he swoops down to assist, only to find his tutors, Nina and Melly, escorting the carriage along with Parma's father. Seeing Melly injured, he quickly heals her with his magic. The bandits, underestimating him as just a kid, start laughing, but Kane prepares to make them pay for hurting Melly. As the bandits charge, Kane effortlessly defeats them with minimal effort, sending one flying with a single blow. He continues to dispatch the rest, commenting on the difficulty of restraining his strength, though the girls think he's incredibly powerful. With all the bandits captured, Melly wonders why he appeared so suddenly. Kane explains he was on a subjugation quest, shocking the girls, as these quests are for C-ranked adventurers and above, and he should have just registered. Kane then reveals he is already a ranked, astonishing the girls as he skipped right past the C and NB ranks. The bandits end up getting taken back to town in a cage, and the group goes to Tamani's item shop to drop off Parma's father. Parma comes out to see her father, and she is happy to see Kane. She is surprised to see the bandits, and she thinks about how it's their day off school, but he is still working so hard. She thinks he would also be busy as a baron, and Melly is surprised by his promotion, wondering if she should be more formal towards him, but Cain tells them he will always see them as his master, and they can just keep calling him by his name. Melly thinks he has grown so much, thinking he seems like an adult now, but Cain slips away, saying he needs to get back to report to the guild as he runs off, but the girls chase after him. Cain goes to turn in his quest, and Tia is surprised he is already finished. She is about to go tell the guildmaster, but some adventurers start harassing the two girls. The girls try to ignore them, and the man tries to grab Melly, but he gets stopped by Cain. The men realize who he is, remembering their past encounter, and they become terrified, falling to the ground. Claude appears, curious about the commotion, and Cain is happy to see him. The thugs flee, and Claude is surprised to see Melly, who reveals that she is actually his younger sister. Cain marvels at the coincidence, and the group shares some drinks. Claude asks what brought them together, and Melly explains how Cain saved them and effortlessly defeated the bandits, mentioning his rank status. Claude is astonished, thinking it's only been a few days since Cain registered, but then recalls how Cain kept up with him during their mock fight. Melly wonders how Cain became so strong, causing him to panic since he can't reveal his training by the gods. Melly then remembers how he defeated a red dragon as a child and assumes he has always been this powerful. Claude, impressed, notes that red dragons are SS ranked. The girls also show off the magic bags Cain made for them, further impressing Claude. Lena demands to know how much they can hold, and Melly says she doesn't really know since she has never been able to fill it, but mentions how Cain told them it could fit an entire mansion, and Lena gets jealous, thinking they are national treasure class items. She pesters Cain for one as well, and he ends up promising to make one for her. As she thanks him, she actually falls asleep, and Claude reveals she can't hold her liquor very well. Cain suddenly thinks about how he missed school for an entire week, so he needs to make sure he doesn't miss any more classes. Claude wonders why he is going to school when he is already a baron, but Cain says there's still a lot he doesn't know. Lena thinks he is a good kid, offering him a hug, but Cain quickly runs off. At that moment, Tia appears, mentioning the adventurer who was meant to teach at the academy got injured, and Claude becomes interested, wanting to help Cain out. The next day at the academy, Cain attends his magic class where they practice spells on targets. Eager to try the new spells he learned from YUYA, Cain is disappointed when the teacher forbids him from using any attacking spells, reminding him that even his beginner magic destroyed the academy's barrier last time. Cain is incredulous, and his friends, noticing he doesn't fit in with the rest of the class, devise a plan to help him. In Cain's adventuring class, the teacher announces that their instructor is injured and introduces Claude and others as guest instructors. The students recognize Claude and Lena. Claude begins by asking all the students to show their guild cards, revealing their bronze cards since they are newly registered. Claude wants Cain to show off his gold card, but Cain, fearing further isolation from his classmates, pretends he forgot it. The class moves outdoors, and Claude starts training the students one by one. Cain gets excited, thinking he will finally be able to show what he can do, but Claude keeps fighting the other students instead. Cain gets ignored and isolated, but this is all part of Claude's plan. They want to first show how strong they are to the other students, and when Cain is able to keep up with him, the other students will be impressed by his strength, and he will become the hero of the class. Cain gets anxious waiting, but another student tells him to get in line. Claude beats up all the other students, and Cain is the last one to go. They start to fight, but the bell rings, and their teacher tells them time is up. Cain is disappointed. He didn't get to fight, but Claude apologizes for messing up the time. Claude promises to fight him next time, but Cain's teacher mentions how the school doesn't have the budget to invite Claude again, since a lot of their money was spent repairing the wall and barrier that he destroyed. All the students thank them for the training, but Cain is left devastated that he didn't get a turn. At night, Cain gets furious thinking about Claude, and goes on a rampage through the forest. He encounters a dragon, but easily defeats it with a single slash, raining fire down into the forest, causing a massive explosion. The guards, believing they are under attack by the Prince of Darkness, sound the alarm, and Garm rushes out to investigate. After blowing off some steam, Cain calms down and teleports home, leaving his handkerchief behind. When his father arrives, he finds only an enormous hole and Cain's handkerchief, leaving him shocked. The next day, Cain is summoned by the king, who informs him about what his father discovered. They suspect it's the work of the Prince of Darkness and consider contacting other countries to prepare. Cain, however, comes clean and admits it was him. The king reprimands him, and when he returns home, his father also lectures him. Meanwhile, in a distant cave, a fragment of Aaron is picked up by a goblin and then swallowed by a dragon. The dragon becomes possessed, and Aaron takes over, realizing that the seal on him has weakened. He has regained some of his power and vows to get revenge on the other gods. At the academy, Cain's class is learning about summoning magic. The teacher calls him out, and he thinks he is being told to study by himself, but she tells him that since they are not practicing attack magic, he is allowed to participate. Cain gets excited, and their teacher introduces their instructor Grat, a mage from the palace. Grat explains there are two types of summoning magic. The first is when you establish a bond with a monster and form a contract with it, and the second way is to summon a monster from a magic circle. Grat tells them they will be practicing the magic circle summoning, and he hands out talismans to them. The students start summoning all kinds of different creatures, trying to form contracts with them. One student manages to summon a giant beast, but it refuses to form a contract and disappears. Grat explains he didn't have enough magic power to make the monster submit, but compliments the boy for being able to summon such a monster in the first place. After all the other students are finished, Grat tells Cain it's his turn. Cain gets ready to put all his magic into the circle, but he worries about summoning a crazy monster like he did when he was young. However, Grat tells him not to worry, saying the monster will just disappear if he can't form a contract, so he tells Cain to give it all he's got. Cain excitedly pours all of his magic into the circle, but Grat begins to panic as the magic becomes overwhelming, even blowing Cain away. A demon appears, wondering how a human managed to summon him, the Prince of Darkness. Cain panics upon hearing this and quickly casts Flash to blind everyone else. He wonders if the demon is an ally of Aaron, but the demon looks down on him for being human. Using his ability, the demon assesses Cain's status and begins to approach him. Cain prepares for a fight, but the demon immediately submits upon seeing how strong he is and offers to become his underling. Cain is surprised, and the demon, introducing himself as Seth, the Prince of Darkness, expresses his happiness to form a contract. Cain, however, declines such a request. Seth tells Cain he can summon him whenever he wants and then disappears. Grat, curious about the demon, asks Cain about it, but Cain claims he couldn't form a contract and that the demon simply vanished. Grat believes his story, and Cain is relieved he managed to cover it up. However, Grat later reports the incident to the king. The king interrogates Cain, and he is forced to admit he summoned the Prince of Darkness, which causes them all to freak out, because if it decided to go on a rampage, it could destroy the capital in a blink of an eye. Cain apologizes, saying all he did was put his magic into the circle. Grat wonders just how much magic he has to be able to summon the Prince of Darkness, and the king thinks it must have been because of the training he received from the first king. He asks to see Cain's status, and he warns Grat not to speak of anything that he sees. Cain opens his status window, and they are shocked to see he now has the title of demigod, and his status has become immeasurable. The king wonders what the heck is going on, and Grat bows down to him, calling him a god. The duke thinks they should start calling him master, and the king worries he has the power to destroy the entire world. But Cain says he has no intention of doing anything like that, telling them to just treat him as they normally would. The king decides to promote him to a viscount, giving him an entire town, and decides to publicly announce his engagement to the princess. Back at his house, Sylvia congratulates Cain on his promotion and wonders which area he will be assigned to. He mentions it should be a town near the capital. Sylvia suggests they celebrate, but Colin suddenly brings news that his brother witnessed an onslaught in the forest of monsters. Kane immediately heads back to Gracia and visits his family home, where he meets with his brother. His brother explains that there has been a significant increase in the number of adventurers being attacked in the forest over the past few months. He sent out high-ranking adventurers to investigate, and they reported that the number of monsters in the forest has grown and they have become more savage. His brother recalls an onslaught incident from a few decades back where monsters suddenly turned savage and attacked the city. Comparing the records, the current behavior of the monsters is quite similar, suggesting it could be another onslaught, but without concrete evidence, they can't commit all their men. Kane decides to investigate the forest himself, but his brother worries, thinking he is still young. Kane reassures him by showing off his gold card and reminding him of how he defeated a red dragon in the past. Grateful for his help, his brother thanks him. Kane then heads to the Adventurers Guild, where the clerk initially looks down on him for being just a kid. She is shocked when she sees his gold card, and another clerk named Rudy asks Kane to forgive the girl since she is new. Curious about his intentions, Rudy wonders what he is after, and Kane asks for more information about the forest. Rudy explains that the monsters have become increasingly savage, with more signs indicating it could be another onslaught. At that moment, Millie and Nina arrive at the guild, and Kane wonders what they are doing there. They mention that the guild put out a call for higher-ranked adventurers, and the monsters in the forest were too tough for just the two of them, so they were planning to meet up with Claude and Lena. Rudy wonders what Kane plans to do, and he says he wants to check out the forest first. Rudy thinks it's too dangerous for him to go alone, and since he is a noble, if anything happened to him, it would cause problems for the guild. Kane thinks he should be strong enough, but Rudy suggests he should find someone to go with. He has an idea, and he summons Haku and Jin to accompany him. They instantly jump onto him, but they soon notice something is up. Kane uses his search skill, and as he runs through the forest, he gets the feeling he is being watched. He defeats a number of monsters, but the strange feeling doesn't disappear, so he summons Seth, who wonders who is disturbing him. But when he sees Kane, he quickly gets on his knees. Kane tells him about the strange feeling he's getting, and tells Seth to help him investigate the forest. Seth senses an overwhelming presence nearby, and notes that the monsters are also trying to reach it. Kane wants to know more, so Seth summons his servant Dalmatia. Dalmatia is surprised to see Kane, and Seth explains he is their new master, calling him the god who will conquer the world, and Dalmatia worships him. But Kane complains, saying he isn't a god. Seth explains Dalmatia is an expert at investigation, and Dalmatia uses his special skill, which summons creatures that he spreads throughout the forest. The monsters begin to go wild, and Kane swiftly takes them out, impressing Dalmatia with his strength. Kane easily defeats all the monsters and decides to leave the investigation to the two while he returns to the guild. His friends are shocked to see all the S-ranked monsters, and soon Claude and Lena join them. They wonder where the monsters came from, and Kane explains they came from the forest. This news worries them, and Kane suspects there are even stronger monsters deeper within the forest. Meanwhile, Dalmatia discovers something trying to intimidate them, warning them not to get closer, but Seth sees it as a challenge. Aaron senses their approach and sees an enormous horde of monsters waiting in the forest. Aaron decides it's time to start his game and sends all the monsters to attack. Seth quickly teleports to warn Kane, and the ground shakes. The guards ring the alarm as Seth informs Kane that the onslaught has begun. Kane tells Rudy to inform his brother and instructs Claude to organize the adventurers to defend the town. He plans on returning to the forest, but Rudy warns him it's too dangerous. Kane reassures them, saying he has strong friends, and Seth is touched by being called a friend. As they prepare to leave, Tefana suddenly arrives, hugging Kane, and explains that his father issued an emergency order. Tefana wants to follow him into the forest, but Kane asks her to help defend his hometown instead. She agrees, and Cain quickly runs off with Seth. Dalmatia is seen fighting the monsters, seemingly enjoying himself. A dragon appears behind him, but Seth takes it out, and Cain casts an inferno down onto the monsters. The monsters turn their attention to the source, preparing to face Aaron, who seems to be waiting for them. Seth tells Cain to go on ahead while he handles the monsters. Cain worries if Seth will be okay, but Seth says he will summon his underlings for help, warning they might destroy some of the forest. Cain tells him not to go overboard, but Seth advises Cain to worry more about himself, and Cain heads on. Meanwhile, at the town, Tefana organizes the defenses, and Nina detects countless monsters approaching. Millie decides to head into the forest, saying that no matter how strong Cain is, he still might need their help. Nina agrees to go with her, and Claude and Lena think they can't let them go alone, so they all head off together. Seth summons his underlings, his 4 demon generals, and they wonder what is going on. They realize the situation, and Seth mentions he is helping a friend. They wonder who could have made such a request, and Dalmatia tells them Seth has a new master. They are shocked hearing Seth enter a contract, wondering who it could be, and Dalmatia tells them about Cain, calling him a demigod and God's chosen one. They can't believe what they are hearing, but Seth orders them all to help control the situation with the monsters. Meanwhile, we see Cain trying to take out as many monsters as he can, but there are just too many. He is suddenly attacked by a flame, but Cain manages to counter it with his own spell. A black dragon is revealed, and Cain recognizes it as Aaron. Aaron is disappointed. He couldn't revive at full power, but he summons more monsters to attack the town. Cain tells him to stop, but Aaron calls it a game, wanting to see if the humans will get devoured by the monsters. We see Cain's friends in the forest, and they see the demon generals fighting against the monsters. They wonder who they could be, but they soon realize they must be friends of Cain. The demons aren't able to hold them all off, and Seth tells them they will have to rely on the humans. Meanwhile, Aaron recognizes Cain's eyes, thinking they resemble those who sealed him away, and Cain realizes he's referring to his parents. Aaron breathes fire at him, but Cain manages to evade it and counterattacks with his Inferno spell. His attack lands, but Aaron mocks its weakness. Cain knows he needs a stronger spell, but Aaron attacks before he has the chance. As Aaron chases him, Cain summons Haku and Jin for assistance. They manage to knock Aaron down, but Haku gets struck by Aaron's tail as he focuses his fiery breath on him. Meanwhile, Cain's friends fight the monsters, but they eventually tire and start to get overwhelmed. Claude struggles against a massive beast, but it is suddenly defeated when Tefana and her knights arrive to help. Haku gets hit by Aaron's breath, but Jin jumps in to protect him. Aaron continues his assault, but Cain steps in to shield them. Aaron finds him annoying, but Cain, thinking about everyone he wants to protect, activates his father's ultimate skill, which Aaron recognizes as Emperor-level magic. Cain unleashes his attack, and Aaron counters. A massive beam of light erupts, visible from a distance, as Cain goes all out to protect everyone. Suddenly, Haku and Jin bite him, causing Cain to wonder what they are doing. Seth and Dalmatia appear, telling him he's gone overboard. They reveal that Aaron is gone, and the fight is over. Cain realizes the onslaught is finished, and they inform him that all the monsters have retreated back into the forest, ensuring the town's safety. Cain celebrates with his friends, but he is later reprimanded by the king. The king asks about the beam of light, saying it was visible across the entire kingdom, and people started thinking it was the coming of God. Cain says he had to use his emperor-level magic against Aaron, but the king reminds him he can't just use such devastating magic. They end up having a ceremony for Cain, where Cain is promoted to a viscount, and he is given the domain of Dorenthal. However, after the ceremony, Tifa reveals Dorenthal is a problematic domain where all the past nobles in charge have failed to control because their adventurer guild has too much power. Celestia wants to protest to her father, but Cain thinks it will be okay, and he thinks it will be exciting to build a new town. They think he'll do a great job, but they all remind him not to go overboard. They head off to Dorenthal, but it seems Cain has caused quite the commotion as a guard reports his antics to the king. It seems Cain immediately headed to the Adventurers Guild, where the adventurers tried to give him a welcome, but he easily crushed them all. After that, at the tavern, he saw some men kicking the maid, so he kicked them out as well, but the guard ended up arresting him. The king can't believe what he is hearing, but the duke finds it all amusing. Cain tells Telestia and Silk all about Dorenthal, but Seth suddenly appears, begging for his help. Seth explains he was kicked out by his wife because he was caught cheating, but his wife suddenly appears. She pays her respects to Cain, but she wonders what he thinks about Seth's actions. Cain thinks he is wrong for cheating, especially since he already has such a beautiful wife, and the demon is flattered. Seth warns Cain that women change after they get married, but Telestia and Silk both reprimand him. The king received reports about Cain, learning that he had even destroyed the Dark Order. A guard informed the king that Cain had gone even further, not only building a wall, but also a castle. Telestia was surprised by its size, noticing it was even larger than the palace and pondering her father's reaction. They concluded that Cain had once again gone overboard. Today's movie is here. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow the channel to update the latest movies. Goodbye.